This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Lots to get to this half hour. Let's begin with Israel and the U.S. standing at a diplomatic and military crossroads. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, Israel says it needs to finish the war against Hamas in the key city of Rafah in Gaza. But the U.S. reportedly may not let Israel use weapons from America if Israel launches its military campaign against Hamas's stronghold.
In his State of the Union address, President Biden put the burden on Israel to protect Gazans.
Israel has an added burden because Hamas hides and operates among the civilian population like cowards, under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. Israel also has a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza.
In order to increase humanitarian aid into Gaza, the administration announced plans to build a pier in Gaza. Senator Marco Rubio pushed back on that idea on Fox News.
The only people on the ground with any organization to distribute things are Hamas. So in essence, can they guarantee that we're going to go through all this trouble, put American lives on the line, just so aid can be distributed to Hamas, who in turn will then control it like they've controlled everything? There's no Hamas fighters starving to death, and Hamas has no history, none whatsoever. They have zero history of either helping civilians or people. So this is all for show, and it's dangerous.
Rubio says the fastest way to get aid to Gaza is to defeat Hamas. It's a goal Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged to IDF soldiers at a graduation ceremony, saying Israel had to take out the last Hamas stronghold in Rafah.
Whoever tells us not to operate in Rafah is telling us to lose the war, and that will not happen. There is international pressure, and it is increasing. But it is precisely when the international pressure increases that we must close ranks among ourselves. We must stand together against the attempts to stop the war. This is what the psalmist says, "Who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle." But today, we have a clear goal, achieving total victory in the war.
In what would be a major move, the Biden administration appears to be considering restricting the use of U.S. munitions if Israel launches a military operation into Rafah. David Ignatius of the Washington Post quoted former U.S. ambassador to Israel, Martin Indyk. If Israel launches an offensive in Rafah without adequately protecting the displaced civilian population, it may precipitate an unprecedented crisis in U.S.-Israel relations, even involving arms supplies. Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of British forces in Afghanistan, tells CBN News that would play into the hands of Hamas.
I think it's very irresponsible of the United States because President Biden himself and Secretary Blinken have both said that they understand Israel's need to eliminate Hamas, and to do that, they've got to go into Rafah. If they don't destroy Hamas in Rafah, then effectively Hamas have survived and will have won the war. They will declare victory. There will still be a major threat to Israel.
Meanwhile, the head of Hamas, Yair Sinwar, is reportedly holding up the negotiations for a ceasefire and the release of the remaining hostages. The Wall Street Journal reports Sinwar believes Hamas has the upper hand in the talks because of the splits in the Israeli war government and divisions between the U.S. and Israel. So he's demanding a permanent ceasefire and a pullout of all Israeli forces from Gaza, conditions Israel won't accept.
And for more now, we turn to Chris Mitchell, who's joining us from Jerusalem. So, Chris, the debate continues over humanitarian aid for Gaza. The Biden administration says the only real solution is to create a Palestinian state. Is this something Israel is willing to consider?
Well, I don't think Israelis are willing to consider that, Ephraim. It's been 30 years since the beginning of the Oslo peace process, and that was calling for a two-state solution. It hasn't worked in more than 3 decades. The PA, the Palestinian Authority, presumptively would be the other state besides Israel. They want the destruction of Israel. They say it clearly in their media. They say it in their school curriculum. In terms of Israelis' sentiment about a two-state solution, the Knesset voted recently 99-0 to advocate a Palestinian state. So there's really no appetite here in Israel for a two-state solution. It does sound good, you know, maybe a two-state solution, 2 states living side by side. but the Palestinian Authority has proven over those years, many say here in Israel and around the world, that they're not the state that should live beside Israel. They support Hamas. Many of the Palestinian people in both Gaza and in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria support Hamas as well.
Chris, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel needs to take out the last of Hamas' stronghold in Rafah. However, the United Nations says this cannot happen. Why is this?
Well, they're saying, first of all, they want to protect the population. Many of the people from Gaza have fled to that area, more than 1 million, to want to protect the population. But some actually don't want Israel to actually win this war. And that's why Netanyahu and others, like the interview we did with Colonel Richard Kemp, say Israel really needs to defeat Hamas in Rafah. It's the last stronghold of Hamas. There's maybe 4 battalions out of 24 that remain there. And then if they survive, they'll be able to say that they're victorious and they win, and they could live another day to come against the Jewish state. That's why many believe this is really that crossroads that we talked about in the report. The U.S. may restrict using American munitions against Rafah, but the IDF and Israel says they really need to defeat Hamas in this last key stronghold.
Real quick, what can we expect this evening on Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, we'll have an update on the latest fighting. We're also going to have a story, Ephraim, on Qatar. Many people are saying that's really a supporter of Hamas, and yet they want to be an ally of the West and the United States in particular. We actually have an interview with Gordon Robertson, CEO of CBN. He dropped by our studio yesterday. He's going to talk about his impressions here in Israel after October 7th. We'll have a story as well on sexual violence on the Israeli woman, and finally, on October 7th, and finally, a story on the annual Jerusalem Marathon that took place today.
All right, Chris Mitchell, thank you so much. Our Middle East Bureau Chief. Want to remind you that you can catch more from Chris and the entire team from the Middle East on the CBN News Channel tonight. Jerusalem Dateline begins at 8:30 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app as well as YouTube. Back here at home, the president delivered his annual State of the Union address last night as he gears up for a likely rematch with former President Donald Trump. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka gives us the highlights and the reactions to the State of the Union.
President Biden tried to strike an optimistic tone and perhaps kickstart a re-election campaign in a fiery State of the Union address in the face of multiple problems facing the country.
We can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger.
The president tried to change the narrative surrounding his administration. He cracked jokes about his age as questions over his mental abilities have recently been raised.
If I were smart, I'd go home now.
Biden also tried to tackle some of the toughest challenges facing his term, 2024 re-election campaign, and the country. He focused on a commitment to fix the southern border while touting a bipartisan border bill that never made it to his desk.
In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing.
The lead Republican on that bill, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, looked on as Biden listed what the legislation would have accomplished.
That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now.
Biden faced challenges by some Republican members over the death of Laken Riley, asking him to, quote, say her name, the young nursing student murdered while out on a jog, allegedly by an illegal immigrant.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
To Republicans, the president's address fell woefully short.
I don't think it was actually a State of the Union speech at all. It was a campaign speech, and that was evident by some of the things that he talked about. He was retrospective in discussing, insulin prices. That was addressed last Congress. ACA, nobody's talking about the ACA right now.
Well, he's lying to the American people. He caused the border invasion.
The official Republican response came from Alabama Senator Katie Britt.
The American dream has turned into a nightmare.
Seated at her family's kitchen table, Britt laid the country's border problems squarely at Biden's feet.
We know that President Biden didn't just create this border crisis. He invited it.
Biden frequently mentioned his predecessor without calling Donald Trump by name, while talking about other likely campaign issues, including defending democracy and the debate over abortion.
My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women.
The president also announced he'd direct the military to establish a port for Gaza humanitarian aid. Biden tried to reaffirm support for Israel eliminating Hamas while also supporting innocent civilians before saying a two-state solution in the region was a path to peace.
To the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time.
Former President Donald Trump had been posting on social media in real time during the speech, at one point posting on Truth Social that Biden looked crazy and angry. The clear takeaway after tonight is the battle lines have been drawn as we head towards the 2024 presidential election. At the Capitol, Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Coming up, a hot trend among tweens. Young girls are crowding Sephora beauty shops and spending hundreds on pricey makeup and skincare products. See how this, though, can be hazardous to their health. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
It's a craze that is sweeping Generation Alpha, tweens buying lots of expensive beauty products. The trend might sound harmless, but it has doctors and parental experts sounding an alarm. Lori Johnson reports.
Nationwide, swarms of preteens flood into high-end beauty stores, namely Sephora, spending hundreds on sophisticated makeup and skincare products.
Of course, we had to get the concealer. And then I got this Drunk Elephant Behydra Serum.
Tween social media influencers lead the way. Hashtag Tween Skincare grabbing more than 49 million views on TikTok.
These are my day and these are my night.
Often demonstrating their complex regimes using pricey clay masks, eyebrow shapers, and more that appear to be made for grown-ups.
We all should go buy this.
Last year, teens' cosmetic purchases rose by 1/3, and they bought almost 20% more skincare items. Adult women are taking note.
We all know about the epidemic of young preteen girls that are absolutely going buck wild raiding Sephora.
Every time you go into Sephora now, it's just all little girls.
And in some cases, pushing back.
I just died a little. Why does this adorable 11-year-old need makeup and the skincare routine, which is more complicated than mine?
Dermatologist Brooke Jeffy says some skincare products in particular are not suited for tweens and warns they should avoid products containing harsh exfoliants and anti-aging ingredients.
Many of these skincare products deal with adult skin issues. So age-related changes like wrinkles, hyperpigmentation, and dullness to the skin, which kids don't have.
Using the wrong products can potentially harm a child's skin barrier.
When that barrier is not working effectively, we get things like redness, we get rashes, we can get infections.
Dermatologists say preteens should wash their face with a gentle cleanser and use a sunscreen, possibly also a light moisturizer. But that's about it. And these items can be very affordable at a pharmacy or discount store.
Your children are going to be discipled either by someone or something.
Christian parenting expert Kelly Newcomb says even more concerning than the trend's physical impact is the spiritual one.
A lot of times, social media has taken on a role of almost an authority. Well, then the parent often loses a little bit of authority, and then God, of course, loses a big part of authority.
She advises parents to teach their children moderation.
Understanding that their worth is not found in these beauty treatments, and that their worth really is found in Jesus Christ, making sure that they are taking care of their physical bodies, which we know is temples of the Holy Spirit, and God does command us to take care of them.
She says the first step toward achieving that balance involves minimizing time spent on social media. 1 in 3 U.S. teens say they're on YouTube or TikTok several times a day, and close to 1 in 5 say they're on it constantly.
It's too critical of a time to just, kind of ignore it and say, we'll just let this pass. It's a trend. It will go away, because I think it means more.
Child psychologist Carolyn Rubenstein says the preteen years are pivotal because that's when kids are easily influenced to adopt values they can hold on to for the rest of their lives.
This tween period where they're developing who they are. And what we're seeing is that the influence is becoming much, much bigger from online social media and these parasocial relationships with influencers.
Of course, preteen girls have always dabbled with the concept of beauty. Still, as they think about what it means to be a woman, today's trend is more extreme and potentially harmful, largely because of the influence of social media. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, Kung Fu Panda 4 hits theaters today, and we've got an exclusive first look at the film through the eyes of its director. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. Welcome back to CBN News Watch. Kung Fu Panda is the latest installment of the wildly popular animated martial arts series. Well, this week I traveled to Universal Studios Hollywood for an exclusive first look at the film and to sit down with the cast and crew, including its director, Mike Mitchell.
It was against an army.
Then we'll just have to get an army of our own. What is this place?
You have a long history with this franchise. Why did you wait till now to assume the director's role?
Well, I gotta say, for this particular one, I didn't just want to make another one. The story had to be great. It had to be a story that continues Poe's adventure and have a lesson for him to learn and be as epic and as great as the previous 3. So I think that's why this one took so long.
See, what we like to do is run it all the way through a couple times and then break it down line by line.
I'm not going to be the Dragon Warrior anymore?
You will advance to spiritual leader.
Tell me this, what does Poe know about being a spiritual leader? He's getting a promotion here, if you will.
Doesn't know anything. He doesn't want that job. He wants to be fighting.
I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I don't know anything about passing on wisdom or inspiring hope.
And that has to do with our theme, is Poe doesn't want to move on. He's comfortable where he is. And we thought that could be relatable to not just for kids, but also with adults. If we have to go from one job to the next, there's a lot of anxiety with that, or moving locations. And so we thought that it was something really relatable. And Poe learns, and I hope our audience kind of gets a piece of this too, that when you move on or when change happens, you're not leaving anything behind. You're still the same person, but maybe becoming something possibly even better.
Master Shifu, I finally found something I'm good at, and now you want to just take it away from me?
No one is taking anything away, Poe. Who you are will always be a part of what you become.
I love that storyline. Tell me, how is it striking a balance for something that's going to reach and touch my child, but also touch me as we sit there together to watch it in the theater?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of my favorite things about working on these films. I love it when we show a film and a dad is laughing and he looks at his 8-year-old daughter and she's laughing at the same joke. It's almost like a magic trick. I'm like, ah, we did it. And yeah, I think this film kind of does it the best. I think everyone can enjoy this and get something out of it.
Lee, would you please show a little backbone?
I'm sorry, but bravery was never really my specialty.
You don't have to be brave. You just have to act brave.
Where did you first fall in love with animation? You've done a lot of things in television and film. When did you first fall in love with this?
I just love, if you even see any of my live action films, they're almost like human cartoons anyway. So I just love humor. I love family films. Those are always my favorite films, are family films. And so I've always just had a love for animation. Who doesn't love animation, by the way? I don't think I've met anyone that's like, that's not for me. It's, again, they're films for everyone. It doesn't matter who your age is.
Last question for you real quick.
Yes.
Where is your own personal valley of peace? Where is it at?
My own personal valley of peace is at home with my family. I got 2 kids. I got a 17 and 19-year-old boys. And I'm very happy that they attended the premiere with their dad and they weren't embarrassed to be with me. And they told me that they loved the film afterwards. So I was so happy. Those are the 2 that I want to impress. It's impossible for me to be a cool guy in front of those guys. So for once, at least for 88 minutes, I was a cool guy. I think I'm back to being the nerdy dad, but that's my valley of peace.
Kung Fu Panda 4 is in theaters nationwide starting today. Stay with us. Your Friday Faithful is coming up next. Time now for your Friday Faithful. I'll leave you with this thought as we wrap another week together. Trust God. Put it all in His hands. From the difficult issue to the simplest concern, trust Him with it all. He cares for you. There is no issue too small. There is no problem too great. He is concerned about you. Every single thing. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online at cbnnews.com. Take a moment. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We love to hear from you. Hope you make this a fabulous Friday. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. And join us right back here, same time, come Monday. Goodbye, and God bless everybody.